Yo, what is up, ladies and gents? Ghost here. Welcome back to another video. So in the lull of time whilst we're waiting for the next Battlefield game, I noticed that Delta Force had made a new update to their mid-season, and one of those small features has been that the Black Hawk Down campaign that they released a few months ago now has a solo mode. So presumably you can play through it all by yourself. There's also a couple of new weapons that they've released on top of that, so I re-downloaded the game, jumped back in just to see if this is worth it for you guys to come back to. And spoiler alert, it's not, but we'll get to that in a minute. As always, if you guys enjoy the content here on the channel, make sure you subscribe up. There's going to be plenty to come, mostly on Battlefield. I do check out Delta Force every once in a while just to see if the game has improved. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to very often, but Battlefield definitely is, so there's a silver lining for you. So when the Black Hawk Down campaign originally came along, I assumed that this was going to be basically a fairly easy narrative-driven story that I could play through in a fairly relaxed manner, and boy oh boy was I wrong. I felt more like I was playing Dark Souls, to be honest with you, and one of the biggest flaws is that you needed a full squad of players to really do it effectively, because if you die and you're alone, there's nobody to revive you, so you just instantaneously fail the mission and have to begin over again. And really, even with 3 other random players, I found that once I got onto the second level, we failed so often just, dying from random RPG shots, or maybe too many vehicles got blown up because this is an escort mission, and soldiers just spawn out of nowhere on rooftops with RPGs, so you essentially have to learn every single spawn position for the enemies, around which corners and pieces of cover they're going to be hiding, so you can get them before they get you. So, needless to say, it wasn't very long before I just put the game down and said, I don't have time for this nonsense. So I was pretty thrilled to see that they have now implemented this solo mode where I thought you were going to be able to play through the game maybe in some sort of an easy mode where they would really lighten the load and you could just have a nice narrative experience if that's what you wanted from the game. But no, I honestly have no idea what they've changed here. So I played through the first mission solo, and that was fairly doable, but as soon as I got to the second mission, it is so incredibly overtuned that I just put it down straight away. And I'm going to show you some of the deaths here, dying from somebody literally spawning in a staircase in a dark section of the map here, instantly getting RPG'd from parts of the map that I really can't even see at all. And bear in mind, every time this happens, you have to not just restart the entire level, but you have to go through the matchmaking process, even though you're playing the game alone. So really all they've done is just allowed you to queue a little bit quicker as a solo player instead of waiting for people. Another massive gripe I have with this campaign is if you look in the bottom left, you can see an indicator of how much health you have left. And the only indication you get is that if you're healthy, you will be green. If you've taken some damage, you will be orange. If you've taken a lot of damage, you'll be red. And anything more than that, you are dead. Now, obviously, you have a limited number of bandages, especially when you're playing alone, so you don't want to waste them when you've only taken a round or two. But sometimes, even though the health indicator is orange, I will still get absolutely shredded in a split second from an enemy that I can't see. Why they can't just have a numerical value or maybe just even a bar as a visual representation of how much health you have left is completely beyond me. I know this is a throwback to the 1990s, but we don't need to go back to the 1990s with all of the gameplay features. So that's kind of my take on it so far, and I'm sure a lot of you will say, oh, you just need to get good, man. You need to learn where the enemies are going to be, you have to know which corners they're going to randomly spawn behind and all of that stuff, and that's fair enough if you want to play this game, this campaign, by the way, as a Dark Souls-like experience, where every time you make the tiniest misstep ever, you have to replay the entire level. Personally, I'm just too impatient for that. The campaign isn't good enough for me to want to put in that amount of time and effort to complete it. So as far as I'm concerned, this solo mode is a complete and total gimmick. Now let's take a look at what other content we've got in the game. Obviously they released this new season, and in my opinion it was a total flop. At least for the warfare mode, the only new piece of content that I could find is a night version of the trench lines map. I'm not sure about operations because I'm not an operations player, and that's, you may say, oh well, Ghost, if you play operations you'll find that there's tons of content. And that's fine to say that, but I'm not an operations player. I don't really like extraction games. I'm a warfare player, and that's the way I'm going to approach this game from. But now moving on to the mid-season, they have released 2 new weapons. So we have a new assault rifle. So I've unlocked this weapon, I've dabbled around, it has a different barrel with an integrated suppressor, but the long and short of it is that this assault rifle doesn't challenge the other meta weapons in the game. And I may eat my own words here because I used to give DICE in Battlefield 2042 quite some flack for making some of their new weapons overpowered. But I can actually see now why they did that, because if they didn't, nobody would really want to use them, and Team Jade, who make Delta Force, kind of have a track record of releasing new weapons and then having them be completely underpowered compared to the rest of them, which makes it a very anticlimactic experience to unlock these weapons, spend a ton of boosters to unlock all of the attachments, kit it out in just the right way, only to find that it just isn't as good as the M4A1. It isn't as good as the CL19. You know, the meta weapons we have in Delta Force at the moment have remained the same from the very first day of the game. It's the SMG-45, the Vector, the Bison, the SM-3M, the M4A1, the CL19, all these same assault rifles and SMGs that are just considered the best in the game, have been the best in the game from day one, and they have literally done nothing to nerf them and try to bring some of the other weapons up to increase the weapon variety a little bit. If you use any of the other weapons in the game, you are plain and simple putting yourself at a disadvantage. Now there's another weapon here as well, it's the 725 double barrel shotgun. And whilst this gun carries a certain pedigree, I guess it makes you think of, you know, the Doom Slayer from Doom or something, right? Or, you know, maybe a farmer, I guess. But double barrel shotguns, on the whole, I think we can all agree, they're pretty badass. Thing is, it just isn't that great. The one-shot kill range is not incredible, so most of the time you're going to have to unload both of the shells on a single player to kill them, and then go through a lengthy reload animation, which most of the time will get you killed in turn. When you've already got other shotguns in the game that are semi-automatic, or even pump action, those are far better choices than a double barrel shotgun. Again, I think a lot of the time, these decisions are taken more around the operations mode than the warfare mode. In operations, you're up against fewer players at a time, so maybe having a lot of firepower, you know, loaded into those 2 rounds is advantageous, but in warfare, it's much more likely to get you killed. So again, kind of an anticlimactic weapon, and that is, for the most part, the new content in the mid-season update here. Now there are a couple more things coming. I believe there is a commander mode, not entirely sure how that one is going to function, but it's like a limited time mode, so it's only going to be here for a few weeks of this season. And then if we go and take a look at the patch notes here, there have actually been a number of significant changes, both to the operators and the weapons, but again, they're just so out of touch with what needs to be done for the game, in my opinion. So let's take a look at Luna. You're not going to believe it, they have buffed her again. So the Volt Arrow has had its attack range increased from 4 meters to 5 meters. So wherever that Volt Arrow is, it is now going to be hitting you an extra meter in terms of its attack radius. Then for operations, damage against enemy soldiers has been increased from 17 to 25, again there for the Volt Arrow. Thank God they've not buffed the Recon Arrow, but like, why in God's name are they not nerfing the Recon Arrow when everybody and their grandma has been calling for it literally since day one? So there are some changes to the AUG assault rifle, the M250 general machine gun, but again, no nerfs to the best meta weapons in the game. No changes to the SMG-45, no changes to the S3RM, is it? The Bison, the Vector, the AS-Val, all of these weapons are well and truly cemented as some of the best in the game, and so far I've not seen them be nerfed. So there's only 2 ways they can go about this if they want to really encourage weapon variety. They can either nerf the best weapons that are in the meta, or they can buff the other weapons. And so far, they haven't really made any meaningful changes. So that's kind of where I am at the moment with Delta Force, guys. I really honestly cannot recommend you to reinstall the game and check out the new content, because there really is none. Black Hawk Down's campaign is much the same solo as it was before, ridiculously difficult. There are 2 new weapons for the warfare mode, but neither of them are really worth your time to unlock, never mind picking up and using. There's no new maps, and there are no interesting new game modes to speak of either. So yeah, kind of sad times. I was hoping that Delta Force was going to be the weapon that would fill the gap between Battlefield games for us, because whilst there is a decent amount of stuff to talk about on Battlefield Labs, there's leaks, there's data mines, the game isn't released yet, so we can't really show and talk about gameplay properly. News about the game is pretty slow as well, so I don't know, I guess we're just going to have to wait for Arc Raiders or keep on playing single-player games for the time being. As always, guys, leave me your thoughts below. Subscribe to stay up to date with everything Battlefield and Delta Force, if they ever release anything cool. And I'll see you guys in the next video.